Hey, welcome back to Defending Our Health. Today we have Craig Sawyer. He's the founder of Veterans for Child Rescue. We're excited for him to talk about the heart-brain coherence support that he's found, not only for mental health struggles, but for a lot of ways to optimize our mental and physical performance. I'm also here with Forrest Seeley. He's the executive director of Veterans for Child Rescue. So Craig, may you please tell those who don't know who you are and why you're the man behind the mission of Veterans for Child Rescue.
Yeah, man. Well, who am I? I'm just a regular guy. I'm a busted up veteran now, but I grew up in Southern Texas, went off to the Marine Corps and SEAL teams, and then did some federal law enforcement, and then high threat mobile security over in the war zones, and started doing film and television work. So I've worn quite a few hats. I've been all around the world, and I've learned a lot of different skills. And I'm excited about what we're going to share today because this is something that's helped me at everything because of the cognitive clarity and the focus and the coherence that it brings. And there's a lot of benefits that I can't wait to kind of unpack and share with everybody. So this should be a fun show as well as beneficial today. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. I know there's a lot of information out there from different experts who have really researched it and delved into the results that they're seeing in their audience. But I want you to explain to people how you happened upon this information and what it's done for you.
Yes, ma'am. And I realized I didn't fully answer your first question. So how I became the man behind the mission of Vets for Child Rescue, I learned about child trafficking from some of my friends and the intelligence community. And I really just got very upset about it. So I started figuring out how I wanted to combat it. And so I founded Veterans for Child Rescue and made the documentary Contraland specifically to expose that crime against children and rally a public support against it and disrupt and destroy that harm to children on the largest scale that I could. So that's why I founded Vets for Child Rescue, and that's my passion now. So yes, ma'am. So I wanted to get that out of the way, Kim, because I realized once you started talking, I'm like, man, I didn't even finish answering your question. So all right, so we're at how I found this technique. Is that
How
where
you
we're
came
going
to this
now?
understanding and what it's done
Yeah.
for you.
Well, I watch a lot of. I used to read ravenously, and now that I've founded Vets for Child Rescue, I find that I don't feel like I have the time to read because there's very few of us that run this org, and where we seem to be overloaded. And there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of pressure, and I'm always juggling multiple tasks, and I feel always overloaded. So I don't read anymore like I used to, but I'm still curious. So I'll tell myself, okay, if I'm going to sit down and have a meal, I can watch a 15 or 20-minute video, at lunchtime or at night. And so over time, I watch a lot of this stuff, and I'm curious about all kinds of things. A human performance, having been an athlete and, SEAL Team 6 operator and not pro motocross, but a local motocross and supercross racing champion and a Southern Texas 5A football defensive captain and strong side linebacker and, skier and all this kind of thing. I've had to learn a lot of different skills and a lot of different mental disciplines and things like that. So that's one of my areas of curiosity. And I saw a guy named Greg Braden talking about this technique. And while I don't agree with everything that he is into, he was talking about this Institute of Heart Math. And when I was listening to him talk about the cognitive clarity and the coherence between the heart and brain that he was learning, and the scientific study from that institute, I started to really resonate with that. I was like, okay, he's onto something there. I'm curious about this. And I started learning and then practicing the technique, and I could instantly feel its benefits. I'm like, okay, this is real stuff. This is great. And I developed it further. And then I've started to try to share it with different friends and family over the last couple of years. And so that's kind of where that all came from. It came from just browsing helpful information on YouTube and then taking it and actually through self-discipline and effort, developing the technique and testing it to see if there's anything there. And sure enough, there is powerful stuff. So I can walk you through the whole thing if you like, a little bit more deliberately, but that's kind of the overview.
Very interesting. I know you've also shared this with a lot of people. You shared it with me, maybe it was a couple years ago. And I too have a very curious mind. And I also need to understand things from both a logical and scientific perspective, as
Yeah.
well as the practical application. Because there's a lot of things we're both aware of that are very science based, but they're very complicated, maybe expensive, or just a big deal to set up. So I'm all about those things that are effective and practical for our busy lifestyle. So one of the things that I liked about this technique, and one of the reasons I implement it pretty much on a daily basis, is that not only does it have a very strong basis in science, but it is also a very, you could say, convenient thing to do anytime, anywhere, especially once you're really in the practice or the rhythm of it. Oops, you're muted.
Sorry about that. It becomes very natural and very intuitive. And as you pointed out, it costs nothing. There's no equipment to buy. There is nothing. So nobody's benefiting from this. The only beneficiary is the recipient, the person who practices the technique. And so, um, you know, I call it the heart of gratitude because that's really for me what it's about. And I'm like, okay, let me unpack for people a little bit without insulting anybody. You know, gratitude and thankfulness. If you look up the word gratitude, the definition of it, thankfulness or gratefulness for being the recipient for another's kindness. That's a pretty good thing. And another description is a warm and friendly feeling toward a benefactor or kindness awakening by a favor received. So that's just being grateful for something good or kind that's been done for you. And if we think about anytime we've been grateful, who have we been grateful to? And a lot of people nowadays, they believe in a lot of different things. For me, I'm grateful to my creator for everything. And when I find that I focus on that for any period of time, I begin feeling very, very good, very positive. So obviously, no matter what your beliefs are, there is a truth and a very real instant benefit to being in a state of gratitude, just in a feeling of gratitude. Um, Even if you don't know who you're grateful to, if you're just thankful, it's better than being resentful and bitter. And and so that's a step one for me. So I just want to look up that definition, and then it's pretty intuitive, but and also it's biblical for those of you who are believers in Christ and you read the Bible. First Thessalonians 5:18 says, "In everything give thanks," not in some things, everything. For this is the will of God in Jesus Christ concerning you. That means concerning each of us in that context. So the will of the Creator is for us individually to give thanks in all things. And I analyze it and I'm like, man, no matter what I'm navigating, no matter what obstacle, no matter what challenge, no matter what situation I'm navigating at the moment, I'm better in a heart of gratitude, in a state of thankfulness. Whether it's any if it's victory or it's defeat or a some sort of challenge, a relationship challenge or a health challenge or financial challenge, anything, I am always better when I'm grateful. Because when I'm grateful, I'm looking for what I'm grateful for. And I see that instantly there are numerous, almost immeasurable, countless things for which I can give thanks when I slow down and begin to scan and look for it. And that's a really cool exercise for us each to do. You don't have to wait till Thanksgiving to say, ask yourself what you're thankful for. I know a lot of us, our parents have always said, well, just, you want to list something you're thankful for here at Thanksgiving. And it's a cool family tradition, but it's something that is beneficial for us every day, no matter what we're doing. So looking at this Institute of Heart Math, I started analyzing them and listening to their materials and looking a little bit deeper when I could. And what I saw that some of the things that I learned from them that come out of there is the heart is fully developed and pumping before the brain is even formed in the womb in a fetus. So when we are growing in our mother's womb, our heart is pumping before our brain even begins to form. So the heart really is here first as far as a priority thing. And I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing because, I think we're not trained that way, and we don't think of it that way. We think of the brain runs everything and it's all cognitive. You have to analyze and think about everything. Well, this is coming out that no, there are multiple aspects of who we are and how things function. So, and that there are 40,000 cognitive cells on the heart, and they surround the heart valves. So what goes in and out, these cognitive cells, and they're like brain cells, but they're not as deeply analytical from what they understand. It's more of a binary on off, true, false, good, bad, kind of a cognition. But 40,000 of them on the heart, and they're on the upper half of the heart, surrounding the valves that pump the blood in and out, and they pump signals like an electromagnetic pulse through the blood to the rest of the body. So it's a neurological function that scientists didn't really start learning until 1991 is when they first started unlocking the fact that there were all these cognitive cells on the heart in addition to the brain. So that's new information, and that hasn't really made it into all the medical institutions' education. So a lot of doctors aren't educated on this yet because it's slow. Sometimes this information's decades in coming into the medical education system. So these cognitive cells are called intrinsic cardiac afferent neurons, is their technological name for it. And this is all peer-reviewed science that's coming out of that institute. So they're learning that the heart sends about 9 times more signal to the brain than the brain does to the heart. So that kind of changes everything. Like, what's going on? Well, the heart has a lot more influence over. So if you look at the way people instinctively have always talked about it, speak from the heart, or I love you, and they touch their heart. It's like, whoa, what? That's just an organ. It's just a pump. It just pumps fluid. Like, what are you touching that for? Why are you saying you care or you love and you're touching your heart? Well, but because they're learning more and more. Well, there's something to that. Like it kind of emanates from somewhere. And so this is all leading up to the technique, is what I'm trying to describe. I'm learning from the heart math a lot of this stuff first, and then we'll get into the very specifics of how to execute this technique, how to perform it and let it work for you. But some of this information is good in leading up to it.
Yeah. So just to simplify and summarize for people that may have a hard time following along, what we're saying is that the heart is more than an organ, and it's also more than an emotion. It actually sends signals or commands to the brain. So it has a lot to do with not only influencing our thought and our processes, but also feeding a lot of nutrients to our brain that Craig is going to teach us how to use here shortly. Is that a good summary, Craig?
Yeah, it is. It's the heart is part of the neurological signaling process or system for the rest of the body. So the body does not just get information pulses from the brain; it also gets it from the heart itself. So
what I'm hearing, Craig, is as the heart develops in the womb, that the heart is the brain. It's starting out as part of the brain and brain function because it's necessary. But once we fully develop, there's still a role to be played with that part of the organ.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a lot more synergistic and complex than I think we obviously realized as a species, until now. So it's fascinating, I find, to learn about it. But let me see what else I have here. So they took the way that they figured out this technique and that it mattered was they wanted to analyze humans that achieved seemingly superhuman states of function. cognitive function, physical function. And they were doing research and scans around the world. And who are these people that have mastered things that seemingly others cannot? And what's behind that? And what they did, one of the groups that they analyzed was the Tibetan monks. And these guys can do some pretty impressive things with their body, including sitting in snow for hours where you or I would get hypothermia and die. They instead, while they're sitting perfectly still, they're melting the snow around them. And they're not flexing their muscles. They're not exerting a bunch of energy. It's a type of meditation is what it is. And they're like, okay, we can't bring all of our big lab equipment, all the most modern stuff, all the way up to that altitude. So we're going to bring the monks, they said, down into the laboratories. So they took a few of these monks, brought them down in their laboratories to study them. And they essentially said, do your monk stuff. And we're going to measure with all our different equipment and see what's going on there scientifically. And so the monk would sit and they would meditate, but their meditation was simply this. They were focusing on an emotion of compassion. And they described that they were emanating this emotion of compassion from the heart organ itself. So it doesn't work to think about it cognitively with the brain. Yes, I have compassion for someone. Well, that's just a recognition of it. What they're talking about is emitting an emotion from the heart organ itself of compassion. Now, I haven't looked into this too much more to find out which equipment that they utilize for this, but they claim to have measured all of the different emotions that the humans have in laboratories and rank them as far as frequency. So there are very high frequencies they claim are the ones that are the most beneficial, like love, compassion, gratitude, these sorts of emotions. And the ones that are very low frequency, low vibrational emotions are things like greed, lust, envy, bitterness, hatred, and all of those kinds of things. Well, you can see the difference in those two states. So if you want to be in a high vibrational, very high frequency emotion, even if you don't subscribe to it in the frequency, through that frequency lens, if you will, you can see that the more beneficial emotions are where we want to spend our time and focus. And so if you can get into that, it's a good thing. So while they're monitoring these monks in the laboratories, the monks are sitting and they're emitting a heart of compassion. Well, for me, I care about people, but it's easier for me and in the laboratory when they're measuring these emotions against each other, compassion or gratitude are right at about the same frequency. So you're going to get the same results. So for me, I can think of a million things I'm thankful for. So for me, that's easy. So I will sit and I will focus on being grateful and I'll speak out loud. For me, I use it as a prayer. I pray to my creator and I tell him, thank you for everything I can think of. And it instantly starts having an impact on me and I can feel it. But with the monks, so they're sitting there and the word that they use is compassion. And they say that it's helpful to touch your heart. So the monks are sitting down and they're touching their heart and they're being perfectly still. But what the scientists are able to measure is an increasing electromagnetic field from the center of their bodies outward and around in a toroidal shape, as is the shape of any electromagnetic field, out of the top of the body, around and back in through the bottom and up and back out. So it's like a pumpkin shape. And so they're measuring this and the monks are perfectly still, but they're generating this enormous electromagnetic field, very powerful. And it emanates pretty far outside of their their physical body. And they're saying about 3 to 5 meters, and now they're learning maybe quite a bit further than that. So they're learning about it very, very rapidly, and it's just fascinating to see what's going on with that. So they're focusing on compassion. I focus on gratitude. It's essentially the same frequency. So that is what they started learning, and they're like, okay, what's happening to these monks? So why are they doing this? And what all else is behind it? And they're realizing, oh man, there's all kinds of benefits to this. So first of all, they're realizing that these guys' brain waves are going from 4 cycles per second up to 40 cycles per second. That means a brain wave goes from the front of your head to the back, or from the rear to the front, 4 times per second. It's going now 40 times per second, and others cannot do this. So this technique is giving them that much, much higher frequency brainwave, and in that they are able to achieve much higher cognitive capabilities. So if you want to talk about focus, folks, if you want your brain to be able to function at a much higher level, this is a technique that allows your body to go into a coherence that allows that state to really fall into harmony, and your brain starts to increase its capability. So while they're monitoring these monks, they started seeing that first there's this electromagnetic field, and where it's coming from is the heart is emanating a signal to the brain up the spinal cord, and it's specifically at 0.1 hertz. And they're like, why 0.1 hertz? Well, it's a very low frequency, but in that pulse, that electromagnetic pulse that it's sending up the spinal cord, it hits the brain then responds. So the heart is driving this communication between the 2 organs. So the organs are synchronizing in this drill, if you will, or this technique. So the heart, when the person is focusing on the emotion of gratitude or compassion, the heart begins emanating this pulse up of electromagnetic energy up the spinal cord, and the brain responds. And as the heart continues sending that signal again and again and again continuously, then that electromagnetic field between them begins to grow and gain a toroidal shape, and then begin emanating larger and larger and larger outside of the body and around and back in. And it grows more powerful as the person sits there in this focus. And I think it's just really fascinating to see it done in a scientific and clinical setting, to go, okay, what's all this monk stuff about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important for people to understand that what we're talking about is essentially optimizing the efficacy, optimizing your brain function. So not only the way it works, but the way that you can control its focus. And that's a very powerful thing. So beyond the spiritual dynamic, whether you have a prayer or meditation practice, it can absolutely enhance that to a pretty significant degree, as I've experienced. But even if only for the sake of cognitive function, this is a very powerful tool to utilize our body's natural resources.
Yes, absolutely. So getting into this high frequency brain state, they call it the gamma wave state, and it's got nothing to do with harmful gamma rays from the atmosphere, from the sun, or anything like that. They've got other brain states, and they refer to this one because it's a higher frequency, just as a new word, and they chose to use the word gamma for that. So there's increased cognitive function in it. There's instant stress relief. So when you're in a state of stress or disharmony, your heart and your brain can be kind of on different sheets of music. And what this does is synchronizes those 2 organs and brings a harmony and a resonance between them. It brings them into coherence. And that's why they call it heart-brain coherence. It's a harmonious state that you can get into very, very quickly, within seconds, anywhere, anytime. I do this on the airplanes all the time. I'll do it when I'm praying over my friends and my family and our organization and mission and our staff and teammates and the children out there. I'll just put really beautiful music in my ears and I'll just focus on what I'm grateful for. And I'll just give thanks for quite a while. And then I'll start praying for people. And it's a different experience in prayer altogether when you're in this heart of gratitude. So, healing, this state, this emotional state of coherence between the heart and brain brings healing from emotional trauma, not just from cognitive trauma, because therapists often talk to people and they deal with what it is that they saw or they thought, and they give cognitive solutions for it. But what about the neurology of the heart and the emotion that the brain does not address, right? You got two separate systems there in some ways. They're connected, but they're not exactly the same. So this really addresses and deals with that deeper emotional trauma, and there's healing from that. So again, we talked about it brings coherence between the two organs. And for me, it brings an instant feeling of well-being. It just feels good. It feels amazing. And it's impossible to be stricken with anxiety when you're genuinely grateful. You know, if you're having a bad day, if you started telling a friend what you were very grateful for, and you went on for several minutes saying, well, you know, I do still have my family, and I do still have my job, and you know, I do still have breath in my lungs, and the sun did rise this morning, and I am still learning lessons every day, and before you know it, you're like, oh man, there's what I have to be grateful for is overwhelmingly superior to anything I'm fussing about right now, right? And it's just that process is good, and it's just beneficial. So that feeling of well-being, you can have that. You can dump your anxiety and your stress at any time throughout your day and do this as long as you're not driving a vehicle. We don't recommend that you do this when you drive it, because when I begin breaking down how to do the technique, you'll understand why, because you need to be in a safe and and relaxed place. So there's also hormonal regulation. So they're noticing that these monks can regulate their hormones. So all their body systems really tend to respond to this state of coherence. And when in this electromagnetic state and its positive state, all the body's hormones and other systems begin to self-regulate. So I begin to wonder, well, how many medications are people on, and how many other health problems emanate and stem from our bodies being stressed and out of harmony and out of coherence, right? There's different frequencies, and there's disruption and distortion, and nothing seems to be working together in harmony. And when you can bring it together like this, man, your immune system is relieved and begins to thrive. And you know, I personally wonder, since it regulates the hormones and other systems, how much else might be there. And I think they're going to continue to learn about that. Again, nobody makes money though empowering the people with this. So I wouldn't expect anybody who's making a ton of money on sick people to share this technique, because they're not going to make any money. In fact, if everybody knew this technique and began receiving a lot of healing through it and enjoying fantastic health, then a lot of those people would probably be out of business. So I wouldn't expect for people who are making billions from you being sick to run crash and beat your door down to share this technique with you, because it's probably not going to happen. So there's well over 100 benefits that they've already identified from this technique, different physiological and emotional, psychological benefits. So that's pretty pretty compelling for me. So I wanted to give it a try, and I did. And I can, when we're ready, I can begin breaking down exactly how to perform the technique. But that's kind of an overview of how I found it and what I've found that they know about it, and how it all works.
Craig, I'd like to point out too, in order for this to be successful, that you've got to carve out some time, typically in the morning and before you go to bed, to do this. And it's not hard to do, but you have to make the time to do it. And it's not a lot of time. And I think that's the biggest problem that people have in their lives, is they're running in so many different directions and they just can't justify the time. But I think once you start executing this and you start seeing the benefits and start understanding the benefits, it's actually, you'll be happy to carve out the time. You'll be great.
Yeah. Well, I ask people, why do you think, why haven't you tried this once you were informed about it? And why do you think other people haven't tried it? And it's like you say, I mean, we all make time for what we prioritize. We do have time, but we have time for the things that are our priority. And at some point we run out of time, and then there is no time, right? So everything's a choice, and everything's a priority. I would say if you are sick, and if your immune system is weak, and if you are stressed or demoralized or disheartened, then this is something that you probably need to make a priority, to find the time and energy for, because it's going to help with those things, right? It's going to help you, and it's good. And that's the only reason I wanted to share it. But I love people, and I want to share that which will strengthen and empower them and make them healthy. I would love it if so many people out there found much greater peace and health because of techniques like this. So that's why I thought it was important to share. And that's why I go around telling all my friends and family about it. And some of them, I mean, one person I love with all my heart, he's like, that's just not for me. I mean, I didn't even get started really in fully unpacking what the technique is or how it works or what all it does. I just began the conversation, and almost immediately, it's just not for me. So some people are not open to it, right? And we all have free will, and that's fine. The thing that I find tragic is when it would benefit them so greatly, and they won't learn. So I don't understand being information resistant unless you do already know that an information is going to actually be harmful. Like I don't know, there are people from satanic cults that may say to me, well, do you want to learn about Satan? I'm like, yeah, I kind of know about all I need to know. I see enough evidence to where, no, thank you. Right. In that kind of scenario, I understand, like, I don't want your information from your source, because, I see harm there. But otherwise, I don't understand why people would be information resistant, other than maybe fear or ego, or just, it just seems so foreign to them in some ways,
What I see is we're in this influenced society. There's so much information coming at us: what to buy, when to buy, what to wear, where to eat. All this information is influencing us. And part of that influence is making us not realize that, we're always comparing ourselves. I don't have the fastest car. I don't have the nicest house. I don't have this. I don't have that. And instead of saying, well, hey, I've got food on the table, I can get up every morning, I can stretch, I got a family that loves me, I live in a beautiful neighborhood, I've got great friends that support me. I mean, these are positive things. And I think it helps rewire the brain too, because if you've got anxiety, if you want to combat these battles that you're having, a lot of people don't talk about them, but you can tell. You can see they're wearing it on their face.
Yeah.
This is the way to do it. And for me, it's been very helpful. Okay. It's been very helpful. And it's almost like there's a discipline that you're gaining from it. It's no different than working out. It's no different than getting up and doing a project. There's discipline as part of it. It's training that discipline. And there's so many other benefits besides just the discipline. And so I challenge those people that are struggling when they have those moments, just start doing this and I would write down a list of everything that you should be grateful for and try to add to that list every day and really focus on it. I mean, if you have a dog, think about that, what that dog has done for you. You know, for me, I was not a dog lover till we got our dog Daisy. I've been attacked by 2 different dogs in my life. And so I didn't really like dogs. And when my wife convinced me to get a dog, now Daisy and I, when I'm doing this, she's on my lap. We're on the front porch. We're talking to God. And it's a blessing to me because this dog has just been really helped me understand what I should be grateful for. And so now when I see other dogs, that I feel the same way. But I have a different outlook on life because of that thinking. And I have so much more work to do in that regard, but I feel like it's attainable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah. It's, I get so excited about it because it feels so good and I feel at peace. And I just want to run around telling people. And it's like people are so frazzled and their bandwidth is so maxed, they can't even slow down to listen to what it is, let alone learn how to do it and then implement it into their lives and benefit from it. It's like they can't even hear what it is fully before they're like, I just can't, I gotta go.
There's a great quote somewhere about busy people need longer meditation. If you have time, an hour is great. If you don't have time, you need 2 hours. Something like that. And I love it because for a lot of us who have very busy, productive lives, we do count every second, every minute, every hour. I know I do. But I want to flip the perspective for anyone thinking they don't have time. And I'm talking to the busy single parents and the people that legitimately have a very full schedule. A couple points to break this down into more simple terms and something that hopefully can help people value why they need to do this and how simple it really is. One, like any practice, the initial trying might be more of a process, but once you get it down, you have that anchor point. And once you have that anchor point, you can connect rather quickly. So all that to say, at the beginning, it may take more effort, but after a while, not only do I predict that you will look forward to it because it fills you with so much joy and gratitude and high vibrational energy, but it also can take a few minutes total with connecting and feeling and relaying this energy. So whether that's first thing in the morning or before you go to bed or minutes throughout the day, this practice isn't something that requires hours of your time, especially on those busy days. The other aspect is that regardless if you have a spiritual practice or not, regardless if you're looking at this as something spiritual or simply something to enhance your mental and physical well-being, this is a practice that's based on science and that also has a supernatural benefit, or you could absolutely apply this to whatever your practice is. But I want people that may be hesitant to understand that regardless if you have a spiritual practice or not, this is something of massive benefit. Like Craig was saying at the beginning about the scientific studies done, this is something that they've measured. This is something that has healed people. This is something that at the very least will make you feel amazing. So those are some of the reasons we want you to try it.
Yeah. I mean, if I could go around and just hand it to people like a business card, I would. Like, here, have this. But everything's a choice, right? We decide what we want to take on board. And I would say this: if somebody tries this and they don't want it anymore, what have they lost? What have they lost? And I don't know anybody who's tried this and said, "Oh yeah, I don't do that anymore." It's like once you find this, your body kind of zeroes out the stress and harmonizes and finds coherence. That's such a healthy thing where you're going to do that instinctively for the rest of your life. And when I find myself getting frazzled or angry now, I can just literally go to this and feel better and go, oh, okay, there's a higher way for me to approach this crisis or this confrontation or whatever it is. I had somebody yesterday just start, he's struggling with something, and he started to unload on me a little bit, and a lot actually. And I started getting pretty hot, at first. And I thought, well, you know what? If I throttle him, that's not my best. And I love the guy. So I just slowed down, and I did this without even really consciously thinking about it. And I just came into a state where I'm like, you know what? There's a better way. There's a loving way to respond to this. And that's what I want. And it's just like right back in that, it's like a reset. For me, Kim, it kind of seems a lot like the grounding principle, for physical health. And they say, you should step on the ground with bare feet as often as you can, because it zeroes out a lot of the stress and a lot of the bad energy that doesn't, belong. Like it grounds you to the earth. I think this is another technique that does that. So those are two things I do as often as I can throughout the day. So I think it's that important. So
Before we begin unpacking, because I know people are excited to hear the actual strategy and the instructions, if you will, what this comprises of, what are some common misconceptions about this heart-brain coherence that you'd like to address? Or what are some things this is not, for anyone who's skeptical or doesn't know what we're getting into?
Well, I have had somebody say, well, I don't, meditation is not, meditation's of the devil. I've heard those words used. And I'm like, well, this is not that. This is not zeroing yourself out and letting whatever entities in the universe flow through your head. And it's not that type of meditation. This is, for me, it's prayer. I'm emitting from my heart organ gratitude to my creator for literally everything he's done for me. That's what it is. It's prayer. So I think that's one misperception, is it's because the term meditation is used. Of course, the Bible mentions meditation dozens of times. And we are to meditate on the word, on the truth, and so that we kind of let it sink in. And so it's just like a lot of modern day people that I think that are so busy, their bandwidths are so full, they don't even realize that the Bible says to meditate on it. And so they hear the word meditate and they trigger and they automatically run in fear. And we're not to walk in a spirit of fear, but of power, folks, and of love and a sound mind. And a lot of people need to sit down and cool out and pray. And they need to do it this way, to chill out and realize that there's a way of walking in peace without being so stressed and frazzled and knee-jerk reaction and instantly condemning things that you don't even know about yet. So if you're not walking in a spirit of fear, you don't need to instantly condemn what you don't know about. Just listen, and if doesn't line up with the Bible, simply discard it. But you don't need to freak out. So I think that's one misperception, is that it's somehow bad in its the use of the word meditation, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. This is not a woo-woo practice. It's kind of a joke, but for anyone who's concerned about that, it's not inherently religious. It's not inherently actually all we're doing is connecting with gratitude. So regardless of what you're thankful for or who you're giving thanks to, the goal here is to connect with that high vibrational, powerful state. And if you disagree with gratitude, then that's probably a different conversation. But let's go into the actual instructions of how to do this.
All right. So the technique, what they recommend and what I recommend is find yourself a comfortable place where you feel safe, where you're not worried about somebody coming in and intruding and harming you or disrupting you. I like to do it outside because I like to breathe very deeply. The fresh air is just a beautiful, healthy thing. And so I like to do it early in the morning when the air is the cleanest and freshest. And you need to be in a relaxed state. So get comfortable and sit down or lie down and prop yourself up however you're comfortable. And a lot of us have different injuries and pains and stuff like that. So get in a position where you're not in pain, but you can focus, because it does take a cognitive focus. You got to think first and focus on what you're there to do. Otherwise, your mind will just run amok, and you'll after a while you'll be daydreaming. You're like, uh-oh, what am I doing? What am I here for? So, and then once you're there and you're comfortable, slow your breathing down slightly, not radically, but when you slow down your breathing, it sends a signal to the rest of your neurological system that you're safe, because we don't slow down our breathing when we're under threat. So this is a peaceful and a tranquil thing, to slow your breathing down. This is what we do when we go to sleep or when we relax. We know we're in a safe place. Slow our breathing down, and that relaxes everything. That's beneficial for this technique. All right. And so they recommend that you touch your heart. And what I do, I just take the tips of my fingers and turn them inward and just kind of touch my sternum with the tips of my fingers. So when my thumbs are up, and I just turn my fingers toward my sternum and just gently touch my sternum. For me, that's a comfortable way to do it. And the reason it's helpful to touch the heart area is because wherever you touch, your focus goes. And you want to touch your heart because that's where you want to focus, because they say that it doesn't work if you just think about, yeah, I'm thankful. Yeah, I'm grateful. Yeah, I'm compassionate. That's a cognition. This technique does not work from that. And a lot of people struggle with focusing on the heart and feeling the emotion from it. So you want to emanate the emotion of the gratitude from your heart organ. And that's a struggle for some people that haven't been martial artists, or they're not high-level athletes, and they haven't mastered anything really physically before and gotten a hold of these types of things. But the touching of the heart area helps with that. So where your fingers are touching, mentally focus and imagine breathing out gratitude from your heart organ, like you're breathing it out of your body. Like, thank you. I say out loud, thank you. Thank you, Father, for this, for that. And I can feel the emotion. So after a little practice, even if you're someone who's kind of closed off to your emotion because maybe you're from Eastern Europe, or you're from a family where you're not used to showing emotion, or you're maybe left brain, very analytical, very logical, mathematical. Those type of people are not very close tune with their emotions either. And it's a little more difficult, but you can still get there. We both have two hemispheres of our brains. And just like our heart and our brain need to be on coherence, so do our left and right hemispheres of our brain. So we're to use our emotions and our analytical skills together. Our brain is much more effective than just being dictated by only one side out of balance. So there's a perfect balance for everything. So this is one of those situations where get in tune with the emotion. Some would say the emotion is the prayer. Like, don't just think it, feel it. And I'll explain a little bit more about why that actually makes scientific sense as we go. So when you are emitting this gratitude, I say thank you. And I like to say it out loud because it helps me generate that emotion and feel that emotion. But if you can't find the words, just focus on the feeling of gratitude. Because for those of you who are believers, who are Christians, our Creator knows what we're needing to communicate before we can even form the words. So He hears you. He knows. And it's the emotion that the signal He's getting is from the heart. Boom. He already understands. Instantly linked from the deepest spiritual level. Boom. He's already got you. So just emit that. And it's like you're just sharing, mainlining straight to the creator from your heart, but it's the emotion. So some would say again, the emotion is the prayer. You almost don't need words for this because it's a higher state than that. So keep focusing on emitting that emotion of gratitude, not just the thought, the emotion. So when you get to where you can feel it, and for me, I can bring myself to tears almost instantly, within seconds of thinking about what I'm deeply grateful for. And I'm talking about when he's saved my life, when he gave me such beautiful, loving parents that not all have, when he spared my daughter's life from her attacker. These are things that go very deep, and I can feel my gratitude very quickly, and I can come to tears. I mean, it's hard for me to not get choked up when I just talk about those things. And when I focus on feeling it, and saying thank you for it, it's like, whoo, my emotion comes out real quick. So for me, I can get it in the state instantly. Other people, maybe may take a little time at first, but once you practice it, it becomes muscle memory. It becomes intuitive, instinctive. It's like something you just do. And after a while, you don't even need a place, right? This is all internal. No one could take this from you. Like you do this in prison, you could do this on a ship or a plane or wherever, right? Just again, we encourage you not to do it when you drive because it's an internal and very relaxed state that you don't want to be operating any heavy machinery while you do it. And then as your brain pulses this signal to the brain responds, and it creates that electromagnetic field. Well, the electromagnetic field emanates outside of your body 3 to 5 meters. Well, why does that matter? Well, the scientists and the physicists are talking about the ether, what they used to call dark matter, or all the empty space between the particles in the universe and our atmosphere. They say that if you take a typical atom and you got protons and neutrons and electrons, and if one electron was the size of a golf ball, the nearest electron would be about 2 miles away in scale. So, what we perceive as solid matter is not solid at all. In fact, it's inherently empty space. And they don't know what that empty space is. They call it dark matter, meaning the unknown, the dark, that just would, not matter, or the ether, they used to refer to it. Then they started calling it the quantum field once they realized this is an electromagnetic field between all of the particles in the universe. And then they started realizing down at the quantum subatomic particle level, they're like, we're not even sure that there are actual particles. What there actually is, just as Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. They can't even see what's that small, but they can measure it, and what it seems like it is just energy vibrating at different frequencies. Because the energy vibrates at different frequencies, it gets perceived as different densities and different types of physical matter. That's how we perceive it. So because of the electromagnetic field around it and the way these things vibrate, we cannot pass our hand through, like I'm sitting at a desk. I can't pass my hand through this desk no matter how many times I try. But theoretically, it may be possible. But it's the way that the energy is aligned in the electromagnetic field around it and all of that. So that's a pretty fascinating thing to contemplate, is that now there begin, on the spiritual perspective of the quantum field that the scientists are calling it, they begin calling it the divine matrix, because it is the network, it's the electromagnetic field from which everything is created, from which the creator creates literally everything. So why does that matter with this technique? Well, if your electromagnetic field is emanating out of your body and interacting with the atmosphere around you, this divine matrix or this quantum field around you, they're estimating that that is the way that long-range communication happens. Why do our government agencies have remote viewers on the DoD, the National Defense realm? Because we want to learn in ways that we can't from the physical observation when, let's say, the Russians are launching a new super sub that we need to know about for our own national security. So we have rooms full of people who remote view, and so do they, and so does China, and so do all of the big nations that do this. And does it work? Yep. Where that power comes from, I don't think it's from a good place, but that's a whole different discussion. But what's behind that? What's behind a mother when suddenly she knows my son was just killed halfway around the world in combat? How does she know? They don't understand how that works, but they figure that it moves through that electromagnetic field and it's instant. It's faster than the speed of light because that cognition, that understanding through that quantum field is instantaneous. So the Russians did an experiment, and they took a rabbit who had offspring. She had babies, and they kept her babies in the laboratory in Russia, and they put her on one of their nuke submarines, and they took her offshore many miles out and very, very deep. So here's a nuclear submarine way out at sea, the bottom of the ocean, and they hooked her up with all kinds of monitoring equipment. And then, now this is the Russians, this is not me, so don't get mad at me, but they killed one of her babies. And she instantly went completely flippo. She went berserk. And the question would be, how on earth could she know? Right? How on earth could she know? This theory would explain that if the theory is correct. So that's why your cognitive or your electromagnetic field generated from your body interacting with the atmosphere around you may be important, because when I pray this way, I feel closer to the Creator. When my heart is in gratitude, I feel like my heart is open, and I feel closer to my Creator. I feel like I'm in a more intimate space with Him, because somehow I feel like I'm using that electromagnetic field to just pour out my heart more effectively. Like it's almost like He can hear me better, like it's a closeness. And I don't know if that's right. That's just how I feel, folks. That's my personal interpretation of my prayer time. You see how it feels for you, and you put your own interpretation on it. I'm not a scientist, and I'm not saying that's how that works. I'm saying that's my experience, and I feel incredibly close. And I understand things back that I don't understand if I just say, Lord, please bless my friend on the fly, and I'm not quiet, I'm not waiting, and I'm not open to receive what it is that I'm to get back from it. So in my experience, prayer is a two-way street. And some people believe that the only way that you can learn about the Creator is from the written word, from the Bible. Well, that is I believe, the main way that we are to learn and calibrate ourselves to His ways. But I do, and I know many others who do, hear back when we are in deep prayer. And for me, a heart of gratitude is the best state in which to receive that return message. And by the way, whenever I do get return understanding, it's always something that's kind of humbling for me and causes me to read the Bible more and to pray more and to be better and to discipline myself more and to fast more and do things that aren't really that comfortable for me. So it's not my imagination, because my imagination would say, go in, you need to have some chocolate cake and and go ride motocross or something fun. You know what I'm saying? And this is not that. This is all stuff that's for my long-term improvement and it's usually not easy. But what a value ever really is. But this technique is easy. It's not painful, and it's doesn't eat up a bunch of time, and it's 10 or 15 minutes of doing this, and your whole day is going to be better.
Absolutely. So if you were to lay out the steps for anyone who needs a recap, could you just sort of bullet point the steps that someone should try to practice hopefully today?
Yes, ma'am. I would say get into a place that you feel protected, it's comfortable and safe. And get in a position that's comfortable for you. And then relax, slow your breathing slightly. Extend your exhale longer than your inhale. And breathe very deeply. For me, it's helpful because I like to get that oxygen in my body. That feels good too. Just breathe very deeply. This is natural and healthy and good. And then just touch your heart area with your fingers. And just when you're breathing in deeply, just focus on heart of gratitude. Just feel the emotion of what you're grateful for. Man, thank you for this. Thank you for my life. Thank you for my health. Thank you for my job. Thank you, that I was able to help a friend. Thank you for that relationship. Thank you that I was able to be helpful to them and be a blessing to them. Thank you that I'm able to whatever, and just go through this and feel it. Feel it. If tears come to your eyes, you're feeling it. You're on the right track. And just feel that you're just breathing that out. You're just giving that gratitude outward and breathing in very deeply, and just continue doing that. Focus on the emotion of gratitude, and you're just relaxing and breathing very deeply and slowly. And you will find that it's not very long, 2 to 3 minutes later, you're going to feel, if not sooner, you're going to start feeling amazing. For me, after a few minutes of this, especially 10 or 15 minutes later, my hands and feet are like buzzing, like energy's like pouring out of me, like boo. So I think that we're in the infant stages of understanding all the benefits. Our bodies are temples. And when we respect them and we take care of them, we can do great things. We can do very positive things. And this is a technique for which I am very thankful and excited. And I'm learning that my body is a temple, and it's very powerful. It's capable of many things that I never understood. And so I'm enjoying healing from it and growing in it, and just looking forward to what's next.
Absolutely. You mentioned healing in it, and beyond this specific practice, there's a lot of scientific research about the healing effect that the emotion or the state of gratitude has on your cells. So again, beyond the supernatural or the spiritual, scientific evidence shows cells can actually be regenerated. Hormones can be optimized. Our body thrives in homeostasis. And as you've mentioned before, our modern lifestyle, and especially things like stress, can throw that balance off. So the goal, oversimplified, is to regain balance. It's to get grounded. It's to regain our center. And there's a lot of things in our life that can exacerbate our stress response, that can overload us. And then there's also the toxic load, the physical toxins, the air, the food, and the soil, and all the things that are poisoned that we're ingesting. And then there's also toxic emotional environments and things that we're subjected to. So like grounding, like you brought up before, the physical practice of walking barefoot on nature, for example, it has a detoxifying effect on your cells. And I see this practice in a very similar way, like you said, but there's a lot of scientific evidence to back this up. So if all you get from this is a moment to breathe and regain your grounding and a reset in life, that's a massive win. But what if it's also renewing your cells? What if there's an actual regenerative effect like science has proven? That goes far beyond our current understanding. And like you said, medical science takes a decade normally to catch up and prove things that we may already know, but that they have to go through rigorous testing in order to really be certain of. But I can tell people a few things, like he said earlier about the immune system. If we have a intense stress load, our body goes into fight or flight, which means we're not thriving, we're simply surviving. We are not resting and digesting and healing. We're surviving. Our body is shuttling our fuel and nutrients to make sure that if we need to run from a tiger, we have those capabilities. So even if it's just a few minutes of taking some deep breaths and focusing on what you're grateful for, that changes your state physiologically. What that means is that you can't be angry and depressed at the same time that you're feeling gratitude. Now, I'm emphasizing feeling because this is not just, it's a nice day, it's a nice day, it's a nice day. These are not forced affirmations. It's a feeling, which means you have to get into the state, the emotion, and have the certainty. So I want to unpack some things about breathing because it's a very powerful regulator. I want to unpack certainty and the emotion of being in this experience because that's different than just following the steps. And I want to unpack for people what it does, well, some of the things it does to heal us, because we know there's a lot more that science hasn't really concluded, but there are a lot of implications of this practice, and I want people to really understand them. So let's start with breathing, for example. Craig, you mentioned that, when we're in a relaxed state, we have very deep, intentional breathing. If you talk to any doctor or expert, they'll also tell you that when people are stressed, they have very shortened breath. And a lot of people these days are living like that, where they don't really have a full belly breath. So I want to unpack some more things about breathing, but from your experience, Craig, beyond just slowing down, what are some powerful either breathing techniques or exercises or tips you could share with people to help them get into this state?
For me, music is a huge asset. For whatever reason, I come from a musical family, so I'm very moved by music. So finding the right songs, the right sound, and the right intention behind it really, really is a powerful healing property for me. So Tressa and I around the house, man, all we listen to anymore is praise and worship music because there's so many beautiful artists with whole stadiums full of people just singing in harmony. These people are all synchronized in the same intention and the same gratitude of praise and what they mean and what they're grateful for. And listening to that so beautifully, it changes my state. I just walk around the house cooking or working or taking care of the dogs and petting them. That's good. So, and speaking of the dogs, yeah, if you have pets, man, I can't count the number of times that I have chuckled or just felt so good when our dogs come up and just start licking you until you're laughing, or just do silly stuff in their antics and you just chuckle. And they are such a gift. And I don't like the idea of dogs being cooped up inside and having miserable lives. But if there is a way that you can be a genuine friend to them and they can have a good experience, man, I would encourage anybody that can take care of them properly to have pets, because they just want to love and be loved. And our dogs give us tremendous amounts of love, and it's just been fantastic, man. That's something we just laugh and we're like, man, what a blessing these two knucklehead dogs are. They're just laugh and they play and they just make you lighten up constantly throughout the day when you're around them. So that's something. So I would say the two of those things, pet your animals for a few minutes before you get into the state. If you're at home and if you're on the fly, tune into the right music. Spend a little time, for the next month or two, just scanning and choosing songs for a song list. That's what I do. I have a few different song lists, but one really long praise and worship song list that is just the artists are so talented, the music's so beautiful, and the meaning is so beautiful to me that when I put that in on headphones or earbuds, I'm blessed just from that. And then I add the breathing and the relaxation and the focus on the heart and the gratitude. It just all comes together, and it's just fantastic, man. It's just seems like a supernatural capability, but it's really just being thankful,
Craig, I'd like to point something out. And if you look at the history of man, the last 100 years, which represents a very short period of time in man being on earth, up until then, we were all getting up at the crack of dawn. We were grounding automatically because we were walking outside. You didn't have a lot of distraction because you were hunting, hoeing the fields, whatever you do. You spent most of your time preparing for the winter. And because I would have to imagine that you would have a lot of time to be doing this, because you would be out there. And I call this my reconciliation time when I'm talking to my maker, my creator, where, being grateful would be part of that, connecting, but you wouldn't have these interruptions. I think life has gotten so busy that it interrupts. But I imagine that up until about 100 years ago, this was a much more common practice, and people were probably much more aware of these things just by the nature of how we lived.
Yeah, I would guarantee that. I agree with you completely. And I think, if you've ever noticed that there seems to be a concerted effort to max out our bandwidths, to keep us constantly pinged by electronics, constantly notified, constantly engaged and occupied, and drained of our energy, right? If you've ever noticed that or resented that, here's a chance to regain and empower yourself to counter that, to counter like what Kim pointed out. We all see that so much in our food is toxic. I mean, so many of the chemicals and food growing techniques and pesticides and toxins that are in our food are not allowed in a lot of European countries. They're banned, actively banned, but it's allowed here. So there's a lot of toxins and a lot of stressors upon us psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. So our immune systems need a break. And one thing that you can do to kind of help your body regain its homeostasis and its cohesion, really, coherence is this technique, the heart-brain coherence. So I think it's a self-empowering technique in addition to so many other things. And here's something else. If anybody's ever seen any of the experiments that they do with sound, they could pour sugar or sand on a table and hit it with different frequencies, and the substance, the medium on the table or the glass or whatever, arranges itself very quickly into different shapes. And they can demonstrate all kinds of things through sound. So there's a lot of power to our cells that comes through sound, and what's being communicated through that sound. So one of the things I saw somebody claim just recently, just this week, was when you are listening to something positive, and when you are in this state of gratitude, your cells tend to like glimmer and glisten. And they say that when you're like, if you're listening to death metal and you're in a resentful, negative state, your cells within your blood distort and become ugly and misshapen. And then they change whenever you're in a positive state through whatever you create that. So they say when you're in a heart of gratitude and you're programming your body with something positive, there's this glistening. They're monitoring this through different microscopes and what have you, and that you can see the instant response. So if you can put your body into a positive state, it's going to be allowed to heal itself. It's going to be allowed to let the anxiety to fall off and fade. And it's very powerful for that reason. So that's something else that I heard more recently, and I want to look more deeply into that and see exactly how they've monitored that and what all more might be behind that aspect of it.
Well, Craig, we were shared by Chris Beck, the book, The Hidden Messages of Water by Masura Emoto. I don't know that I'm saying that correctly. He talks just about that, and I would recommend, my mom has read that book and she talks about that as well. And by the way, folks, my mother is a living testament to what Craig is talking about. She's been practicing this as long as I can remember. And physiologically, she's had a lot of challenges over her life. And this has sustained her quality of life, along with a lot of other things. My mom grounds. She spends a lot of time in the garden. But 99% of the time, you see my mom in the garden, she has a heart of gratitude. And I used to laugh at her because she would be thankful for the littlest things. It would be trivial things to most of us, but my mom would be truly grateful just if somebody smiled at her walking through the grocery store. I would hear her say, "Thank you for that smile." And I'd be looking at her like, "Are you crazy?" But she has just learned, she's really dialed in. And everybody that is on our team, for example, my mom is so grateful for all of us and what we do. And every time I talk to her, she gets really excited when she talks about the various people that we've introduced her to, like Jack Sacco. I mean, she is just nuts over Jack Sacco and his mission. So I've witnessed this. Craig, you've witnessed this with my mother. And I think that she is the poster child for what you're talking about.
Well, she's wise and she understands. She is one who has studied so extensively, not only the Bible, but all of the surrounding recovered texts. And she's been over throughout the Middle East in a lot of archaeological digs over the last few decades. And she understands a lot of history and a lot of spirituality. And she's not afraid. She doesn't live her life in fear. So she'll make herself aware of all the different doctrines and theories. And so she simply discards what she doesn't subscribe to or that which does not align with the Bible. And she's not all bound up about it. I'm like, wow, if only more people could be like that. Because there's nothing that I've researched or learned about that she's not aware of and can't tell me back more than I've researched. But she's not bound up about it. She's not in fear. She doesn't subscribe to it. She doesn't believe to this or that or the other thing. But she knows very well what they do. She knows all about it. And she's like, here's where it doesn't line up with the Bible. And here's why it's wrong. And she can tell you why. And I'm like, man, I wish more people were like that. Be aware of everything and discard that which is not beneficial. And my dad used to preach that. Chew the meat and spit out the bone. And that's why I don't understand it when I see people before they even understand what something is or where it comes from. Oh, no, that's not what I already understand. So it has to go. I don't want to learn about it. And that's a fear state. It's like, right. You don't need to be afraid. You don't need to adopt it. You don't need to, soak in it if it's not for you.
Right.
But why run from it before you're even aware? So that leaves you in a state of ignorance and unawareness. And that's not our best. So yeah, your mom is she's an exceptional human being, and I'm deeply grateful for her in my life. And she's still with us, man. It's, all of our parents are long gone, it seems, and she's still here. I feel like she's just, like a beautiful angel, like overwatching us and just blessing us, with what we're doing. It's cool.
Team Mom.
Yeah.
She's our one of our Mama Bear representatives.
Yeah, man. And for those who may not know, we grew up together. So Forrest and I grew up together, and I've known his mom from the time I was a small boy. So
one thing that's so powerful about her, because I had the opportunity to meet her as well, she is so certain of the things, what she practices. So there's no wavering in her belief. There's no questioning it. And I think that's a really powerful state to be in, especially to get the results of the types of techniques we're talking about today. Can you unpack in your definition, what is faith or certainty, and the difference and the power between certainty and fear?
Well, faith is having the trust uh, for something that you can't see, right? It's there's no physical evidence, but you believe with all your heart and soul that it is true, or that it's going to happen. And so I think if you don't have an expectation, your subconscious is very powerful. So if you don't have the genuine expectation that you're going to accomplish something, you're right. Like your subconscious is going to drive the train. We are spiritual beings here in temporary physical bodies. And so we are spirit and we are soul. Our soul is our mind. And we've got to synchronize those two. So if you just tell yourself half-heartedly that, yeah, I'm going to go try this thing. Well, you'll try it, but you probably won't do that well. But if you tell yourself, I have to succeed at this, I will crush it, and I'm going to prepare to the degree that I make sure I crush it times 10, and I'm not leaving any room for failure, and I will go do this. And on game day, you show up and you execute with that level of faith and conviction, then you're gonna crush it. You're gonna do fantastic. But it's that total commitment, and I think that's what the faith is, and the intentionality. And so many things now they're like your intentionality matters. Well, yeah, it does, because our subconscious is listening to us. So that's another reason why we should always be humble, but we should never run ourselves down. Don't ever call yourself something negative or bitter or ugly, because there's so much power in our words. This universe and we were spoken into existence, and our words matter. And so we should always be positive in affirming those that we care about and ourselves. It's not an arrogance thing. Keep yourself low, keep yourself humble, but never tell yourself internally or externally bad things. That you never say that you cannot. Do not ever use those words.
Right.
Everything is a choice. And if you want to succeed, you will prepare and put in the work to succeed. If you want to succeed enough, you will do it, and you can do it. And it's just recognizing that. So I think that is part of it as well. So if you want to have this technique work for you, sit down with that full intent and expectation that you're going to figure it out and get it working and tune it so that it is an asset for you, and you will. But if you tell yourself you don't know, and then you can't figure it out, then I would submit to you, probably never going to find it, because you're not serious about it.
Right. Well, there's a concept about oversimplified. You get what you focus on. And that explains a lot, not only about the power of gratitude. When you're focused on gratitude, you get more things to be thankful for. But when it comes to this type of practice, as an example, the reason we're unpacking it and explaining so much about it is because we want you to understand it. With that understanding comes certainty, where you're not going to feel weird sitting there doing something weird. You're going to understand what you're doing and be certain of it. Because that certainty, and another word for that is faith, that certainty means you have much more power in the actions that you're taking. It will work much better for you. The heart and brain coherence is a scientific concept. When we align those things, they work together. They have a synchronicity. They enhance each other's effectiveness. It makes other things in our life optimal, easier, more streamlined, less stressful. So this technique is very powerful, not only for mental and physical health, but also for really optimizing our body's processes. So I want people to understand why certainty is important. We don't just want you to recite it or go through the motions. We want you to have an understanding of it so that you can do it with certainty, because that is a very high vibrational place to be. You really can't fake it and expect the same results. when you're really sure of it, when you're emotionally involved with it. We talked before about feeling it and even physically placing your hand on your heart so that your mind can connect with your physical body and what you're here to achieve. So I would highly recommend that people take a few minutes, ideally not when you're very sleepy, ideally when you can focus, but also when you're very relaxed, to just be in that moment. A lot of times our life is so stressful and high-paced that we're not present. We're not taking time to be intentional about our breath or certain about the type of power that we could actually have access to. So this is one of many tools that can enhance your physical health, but it can also help you regain that power and control.
Yeah. Now, I listen to people now, and I hear increasingly people refer to manifesting something. And they say that they can manifest something in their life if they decide emotionally and believe that something will take place, something will come about. They will get a raise, they will get healing, um, this type of thing. And they say, I can manifest this by communicating to the universe through this electromagnetic field my positive affirmation that this thing has already happened. So I'm going to feel as though it's already happened and therefore bring it about, because that's the electromagnetic language that the universe speaks. The divine matrix speaks, or the quantum field. So they call it hacking the matrix. I'll just manifest this by convincing myself that it's already happened and therefore bring it about. Well, I think that's actually effective, but not for the reasons that they think. For me personally, I believe that they are they're describing prayer. The Creator has given us that beautiful, beautiful gift. And faith that He's going to give us what we need when we ask Him for it, and we believe that He's going to do what He says, then He's going to give the good thing. He's going to meet that need. And I think it does work through that quantum field, that divine matrix, if you will. But I would caution people on leaving the Creator out of the equation and saying, well, I can manifest it, I can make it, I can hack the quantum matrix and bring it to myself. Well, maybe you can, but why would you leave the one who loves you that much, who set the universe in motion and set it up to where if your faith in Him was enough, that He would allow it to function that way and bring to you the healing or the need, meet that need. So that's my personal feeling on that. I think that's just going back to a biblical perspective, and I'm not trying to condemn anybody that believes differently, but I would say be careful about leaving the most powerful one, the Creator Himself, out of the equation, because He's the one that created everything to work this way, and is a beautiful gift, and we should be grateful for it. And manifesting, yeah, you could probably do that, but I would encourage people strongly to consider it as prayer and faith, because it works. And then you're dealing with the Almighty Himself, utilizing the same principle, but in a different, in a more respectful and reverent heart, which I would say would be even better and ultimately much more effective.
I would encourage people to do some research about some of the scientific studies that have been done about the power of prayer and focus, because I'm really into the scientific approach to things. And I also just have a very logical brain with a need to understand things. And I also enjoy explaining it to people that may not have a religious background or may not want to look at it from a religious perspective, because science is pretty firm on certain things, including the power of focus. So there have been many different studies, and I'm going to focus on one of them, which was incredible. But a lot of the results of these studies showed that there was a retroactive effect. Now, if you get into quantum physics, it explains all of it very powerfully. But the short version is that there were various studies, I'll unpack one of them, where there was either randomized, controlled, or double-blind studies, etc. But there were, for example, sick patients in a hospital, and a group of people were praying for them, and then they had a control group where nothing happened. And for the group of people that were being prayed for, they saw a significant difference in their health or a reduction in their symptoms. For example, this one study, there's so many of them, I don't even know which one to reference, but this goes back into the 1800s, and it's billed as the largest study of third-party remote intercessory prayer by the John Templeton Foundation. So it says 59% of those who knew they were being prayed for experienced at least one complication, compared with 52% who received no prayer, a result that was statistically significant. There's a lot of differences in not only people who were, there's some studies where people didn't know they were being prayed for and saw a measurable result in their symptoms or health. There are other studies where people knew they were being prayed for. And I think that even compounds the power, because if you have a certainty that someone's got your back, that someone is helping you out from the other side, it does a lot to contribute to this physiological healing. Now, as we've talked before, our body is much more complex than medical science understands. And our cells and the atoms and the water molecules and all these different tissues in our body respond to positive and negative influences. They respond to sound. They respond to high vibrational frequencies. They respond to love and gratitude. They respond to words. I'm sure we've all seen those experiments where you put rice or different things in a jar, and people walk by and say a negative thing to one jar and a positive thing to the other jar, and then thing in the negative jar will actually die or shrivel away. It's very powerful. So I want people to do some more research into the implications of this. And I also want people to understand that no matter what you've been through, whether it's a psychological trauma or physical health issues or any types of issues in our modern day life, our goal is to help you reclaim your power. And a lot of that begins with your health, because we know that healed people heal people. We also know that a lot of the different mental and physical obstacles can take a lot of our energy. It can rob our vitality. It can rob our ability to go beyond ourselves and help other people. So we've unpacked a lot of gifts that I really hope people will do some more research about and see how they can implement into their life. But I want to encourage people to really go beyond even our discussion today, because there are so many things you can take away and start to integrate into your life. And I highly encourage you to do so. So Craig, thank you for sharing all this information. And I want to give you the floor here for any final messages or something you want people. What are the main things you want people to take away from the conversation today?
Well, look, we did this in an act of love. And I think, that's why it feels so good to share something that's been so beneficial to us, because we love people and we want them to have it. And it's a blessing to me to be able to share that. And I would say, if you take this technique and you develop it and it blesses you and it empowers you and increases your health and just makes your life better, man, please go share it with others. And that principle of giving and helping without any accepting of anything in return, just give because it's good, is contagious, and it's a blessing to help other people. And I would encourage you, start with this if you're comfortable with it. Once you master it, I would say once you understand it's working for you, and you can turn it on whenever you need to, and then relay that effectively to other people. Go share it with them, and make note about how that makes you feel, and then do more. And you'll never look back. For me, this technique, I like sharing it with people, but obviously it's the ones that come back when they're like smiling, going, dude, like this is this is legit. This is cool. And I'm like, yeah, that's what feels good, because they're being the beneficiary. It's helping them, right? And it's allowing them to zero out all that stress and allow their body to recover, healing and health. And it's just fantastic. So uh, that's it, man. It came from a place of love, and it felt good to share it. And I appreciate the opportunity. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We appreciate you being on here today. So everyone, we want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of Defending Our Health. We've really enjoyed sharing this with you. And I also want to encourage you to find out more about Craig Sawyer, the founder of Veterans for Child Rescue, on vets4childrescue.org, or you can visit v4cr.org. We appreciate you guys, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great rest of your day.